So welcome everybody to United in Strengths. I'm Ryan Niemiec here with Ruth Pierce. We're with the VIA Institute on Character, and happy to be here hosting your character strengths community, which is really what we see this United in Strengths work is being all about, our community and our really capacity to connect with one another on these character strengths and to grow together, to learn together, and to bring our best selves forward, our character strengths forward, to make the world a little bit better of a place, to make our families a little bit stronger, to make our team stronger, to make ourselves and our relationships stronger. So connecting is a key piece of this work here, United in Strengths. And the other two pieces are we pause to breathe, to catch our breath during the day. And I hope that many of you who have been hearing us say that over and over again every week of breathe, remember, connect, that you're doing those things all the time now. So there's a reason why we keep repeating them ad nauseum. So we pause to breathe during our day amidst the stress, amidst the wonderful things as well. Because when we breathe, it connects us into the present moment, and we can enjoy the experience more, or we can cope just a little bit better. And then we remember, and the word remember is to remember that we have 24 character strengths within us. We say remember because it's so easy to forget. No matter how much we study, no matter how much we read, no matter how much we practice, no matter how much we love the character strengths work, we will forget it. We will forget it at different points during our day and our life, because that's what we do as human beings. We can't always remember everything. So we remember that we have these 24. We keep trying to practice that, keep coming back to them as a default as we weave this into our own personal practice. So today's session, we're very excited to present on the 5 skills of mindfulness. So do you know what the 5 mindfulness skills are? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm going to keep you in suspense for a moment, and I want to just give you a snippet, rather than spending an hour on this, a snippet on where these skills came from. So these skills that we're going to be talking about today come from the science. So they come from the science of mindfulness, the rigorous, very rigorous research that's been coming out on mindfulness over the last 25 to 30 years. We've never had this type of thing before when it comes to mindfulness research. And so what happened is in the 2000s, so maybe about 15 years ago, there were a number of different mindfulness tests out there. And scientists took a look at each of the main tests of mindfulness. And they studied them as a group, and they grabbed the very best questions from each mindfulness test. So the best items from all the different research camps that have been writing about this and studying this around the world. And so the best items, it turned out there were 39 very good mindfulness test items. So these 39 items then were looked at, and for how the items clustered together. And there was 5 different groupings of these items. And these 5 different groupings, the researchers called facets. So 5 facets of what mindfulness is. And these researchers, led by Ruth Baer, who's the person that led this project and is the author of the test, the 5 Facets Mindfulness Questionnaire. So it's become, in the last 15 years, become the most popular mindfulness test for researchers to study mindfulness in the world. So we've been using that, the VIA Institute, to continue some of that research on our own, and also to be able to analyze people's mindfulness results, to be able to create the short report that I'll say a little bit more about that later, that Ruth was introducing. So the 5 facets, we're going to actually change the word facets because it's not a very fun, I think it's a fun word, but it's not a very user-friendly word. A much more user-friendly term is skills. So we're going to refer, instead of facets, we're going to use the word skills. So the 5 skills of mindfulness. And I'm going to go through those now. So one mindfulness skill that we are looking at from a scientific perspective and a practical perspective is called observing. And so observing is all about returning to your senses. It's all about bringing to mindful attention, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can taste, what you can touch and feel. So it's a return to those senses that we so easily can take for granted. So those people that might be low on observing, and at the V Institute, we applied some scientific criteria to be able to classify people as low, medium, or high in each of these facets or each of these skills. It doesn't exist actually anywhere else in the world, those categorizations. So if somebody's very low in the skill of observing, then that means they're quite oblivious to their sensations and to their thoughts and to their feelings and their perceptions. They, some people might describe them as going through life with kind of blinders on, or kind of just kind of peering through their eyes. They're not experiencing everything that's around them. One of the character strengths that's so crucial when it comes to this particular skill is the character strength of appreciation of beauty and excellence. When we tap into appreciation of beauty and excellence, we're taking notice of the beauty and the goodness and the skill and the details of things around us. So when we think about character strengths with this skill of observing, we could pose the question to ourselves of, might you be more curious to your five senses? How might you use your curiosity to take in more details with what you smell in your home, or when you're outside walking, or when you go to work, to what you could see, and seeing details, seeing things you hadn't seen before, noticing new things that you hadn't noticed before. Because if we take the same walk every day in our neighborhood, it's so easy to we just kind of put on our blinders. We've seen it all before, and we kind of move on. But this observing piece is about keeping things fresh and noticing the details fresh each time that we go. I think this applies to people as well, right down to our inner perceptions, those kind of automatic ways that we perceive people. So, for example, if you're sitting somewhere and then somebody new walks in the room, let's say it's a person who's white, let's say it's a person who's Black. Let's say it's a person who's from a certain country in Asia, or let's say it's a person from a certain country in South America, or let's say it's a person in a wheelchair. So whoever it is, let's say it's an older person, let's say it's a younger person. We have these automatic perceptions that just kind of pop into our mind, and we're often not very conscious of them. And we can't be conscious of everything, of course. But this observing skill is about noticing our perceptions, how we perceive people, how we perceive different things. But as I said, it's not just about our perceptions. It's also about our sensations in our body and how we use our senses. And it's about our thoughts and our emotions. Okay, so let's go on to the next skill. I'm going to pose some questions to you all after I go through the five. Okay, so here we're going to number 2, presented in any order here. They're not in any kind of rank order. The second one is describing. So this means is a way of bringing forth mindfulness where we are able to describe a situation, or describe actually our thoughts and our feelings with details. So we're tuned in to our thoughts and we're tuned into our feelings, but we're able to not just label them, but to also go into all sorts of details. I'm feeling upset because this and this and this. My belief about this is because of this and this. So we're able to really unpack the belief and unpack the opinion that we have, and unpack our feelings with all sorts of different details. In many times we're thinking many things at once. We're having many different feelings in ourselves. So somebody that's good at describing is able to say, or even think to themselves that I'm feeling angry because the person said that to me, but I'm also feeling a little bit of excited because they were talking to me, and because of this and that. And my opinion about it is this and this. So they're able to give all sorts of different details to that particular situation. One character strength, many character strengths could be helpful here, but one particularly that might be useful is social intelligence. Since social intelligence is very much about being able to put labels on our feelings and to be able to understand those feelings. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I having this worry over and over again? And so social intelligence as a strength helps us to tune into those feelings in ourselves and to be mindful of the feelings of others too. If you're really wanting to grow in that capacity, one pathway can be to journal. So when you sit down and you write about your feelings and your thoughts and your opinions, you're fleshing them out in detail. You are actually literally practicing this mindfulness skill called describing. If you say you wake up and I'm feeling very excited about the day, and here's why: I'm going to be meeting so-and-so and this and that, and I feel the excitement in kind of the beating of my heart, and I'm also feeling kind of a lightness in my body, and I'm also feeling a little bit of anxious I'm going to have a medical test later today, so I'm feeling that fear in my body, and I'm wondering what's going to happen with this and that. So we're able to come up with details to whatever it is that we're labeling. And that what we're labeling might be something very pleasant and happy, nourishing feelings, or it might be unpleasant things, afflictive feelings. So that's the describing skill. So let's move on to the third one, which is the mindfulness skill called acting with awareness. So this is a type of mindfulness in which we are attending to our actions, which means that when we are washing the dishes, we're present to the dishes. We're aware that we're with the dishes. When we're in the car and we're driving, we're mostly present to our body sitting in the chair of the seat of the car, hand on the steering wheel, and the movement of the car. When we're going for a walk, we're aware that we're walking. So these things that we do every day, the things that are very habitual, habits that we have, as well as the very boring tasks, certain maybe morning routines with brushing our teeth and using the restroom and showering, to just work tasks. Maybe it's doing emailing and you don't want to. Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's filing some papers. Acting with awareness, being present to whatever it is that you're doing. Whatever the verb is. The verb is the action that you're taking. So you'd be bringing mindfulness to that action. So that's acting with awareness, attending to yourself in that sense. So people that are higher in that particular skill, they're able to not be perfect, where they're just taking every step with perfect, beautiful mindfulness, but they're able to keep returning back to the task at hand. They're probably pretty good at being able to do one thing at a time, rather than always multitasking and being distracted. They're able to probably do one thing at a time, to just be eating their food, if that's what they're doing, and acting with that awareness, being present to the food. So I think one character strength in this, for this particular area that's useful, is self-regulation, because self-regulation is about returning back to the present moment, taking control of our attention in that sense. But I could also see many other strengths here, such as the strength of zest, bringing forth a little bit more energy to your task and to routines when they could be kind of boring and just kind of not something that we want to be doing. And so the zest or enthusiasm can help us in that sense. Okay, so the fourth mindfulness skill is non-judging. So in a nutshell, non-judging means to, if we say this in a positive way, because non-judging is framing it in a negative way. If we say it in a positive way, this means to show gentleness and acceptance to yourself. So certainly this is in the spirit of all the energy in today's world, at least in the positive psychology world, around self-compassion and loving kindness meditation and so on. So that would be very much in the spirit of non-judging, that element of mindfulness. So if you're low in non-judging, not particularly strong with that mindfulness skill, then that means you probably are very quick to criticize yourself and to do it a lot, and to have it go beyond just constructive criticism, like, helpful criticism. We all can name our weaknesses more, our struggles more, and we can, it's important to take ownership when we make mistakes, of course. But then, of course, we can cross the line where we go too far with that, and we are maybe attacking of ourselves, or very particularly mean. We don't have to be vicious and attacking of ourselves and calling ourselves names, right? That's not constructive. If we're calling ourselves a stupid idiot or an asshole or whatever it might be, that's not going to be very very high for the non-judging quality. But we make a mistake, we have an error in our judgment or in something that we say, and we name that, we're honest about it, and we show a sense of gentleness with ourselves that, hey, everybody does make mistakes. Let me do better next time. So for me, sometimes this can come up for me as a challenge when I'll think after a meeting, or I'll think after I've published a paper or something, and I'll think, gosh, I wish I would have said this. I forgot, I totally forgot to say this. So that's something that can bother me, and that's something that then can linger. And I can kind of be upset with myself. Oh my gosh, if I would have just said this, all would have been more clear. All would have been better. The other person would have understood it better. Sometimes I can let that go and show a lot of non-judging to myself, and be accepting, like, hey, I said what I could in the moment, and it wasn't perfect, but that's okay. And then other times it just lingers, and I could be beating myself. I can think of one right now. I'm beating myself up for it still a week later, thinking about it. Gosh, I should have said this. It's still percolating in my mind very automatically. And so then I can deliberately try to practice that sense of being more accepting and gentle with myself, of being kind to myself. And by the way, a strength very important for non-judging would be hope. Being able to let it go and look to the positive, to look for the good in the situation. Now let's see. So one more skill, and that is the fifth mindfulness skill, which is called non-reacting. So non-reacting refers to, in a nutshell, when we accept our inner experience. So we might have an unpleasant sensation. We might have an unwanted thought, an unwanted memory, feelings, of anger or fear or sadness or disappointment or shame or guilt that we don't want. So this skill of non-reacting is about being skillful with ourselves. Sometimes it's said that mindfulness is about skillful responding, not about automatic reacting. So when people say that, they're referring to the non-reacting skill of mindfulness, where it's about skillful responding. So with the sense of skill, where maybe we would pause, we take that deep breath, we accept, hey, my mind's going to conjure up images sometimes that aren't so pleasant, or I'm going to have certain thoughts that I don't want to have. But this is what minds often do. That could be a very normal thing. I'm going to let that go and come back to the present moment. The strength that could be particularly helpful here is the strength of perspective, because the perspective strength helps us to see the bigger picture, to widen our view, because we could so often get lost in that memory or that thought or that emotion. And when we're lost in it and repeating it, we're not using the strength of perspective. So the strength of perspective says to step back and say, okay, there it is. It's still there. I'm not plucking it out of my brain in some way. It's still there, but in the bigger picture of things, the bigger landscape of my life, it's okay. I'm okay. And that can be helpful with a sense of letting go. I think when I think of which character strength is most associated with letting go, I think of the strength of forgiveness. So perhaps forgiveness is an important element here with non-reacting, where we're practicing the sense of being able to let go of our kind of attachment to the negative thought. We might not be able to let go of that negative thought immediately, or that distressing image immediately, but maybe we can let go of our attachment to it and let go of our suffering around it and being so bothered by it. It still might be there, but we let it go and we move on with the perspective and forgiveness strengths. So now a question for you all. So with these 5 skills in mind, I'm curious, let's start with the positive. I want to ask you what you think you're high in and what you think you're low in. But first, let's start with the good. So let's start with the positive. So if you wouldn't mind sharing what you think you're high in and why, maybe in a phrase or a sentence, you could say why you think you're highest. Like out of these five, what do you think you're highest in and why? So observing, describing, acting with awareness, non-judging, or non-reacting. And let's see some responses here. Which do you think is your best mindfulness skill? Which is your best and why? So a couple of people giving observing as they think they're highest. First three people saying that. Lisa's saying describing due to her verbal skills being strong, so being able to articulate the details of things. Observing coming up again, several people. Emily noting observing because of noticing many different things, such as like words and tones of voice. We just had people tell her that she's high in the observing skill. Amada says non-reacting. I tend to consider all choices before acting. Non-judging coming up a couple here. Marjorie saying observing, constantly aware of the surroundings, like the wind on her face, the sun. So that's all about catching in those details. Okay, so we can keep those kind of coming, and those are fun to read, and also good for giving us more examples and more of a complete picture of some of these different skills. So now let's look at what do you think your lowest skill is out of these five, and why? So I'm just going to put lowest in as a Q here and in the chat. So now note what you think your lowest skill is and why. So Peter, if he was responding to the lowest, said observing, aware of body language and voice tone. We have observing again. Sometimes in my own world without realizing it. So kind of that blinders piece. So kind of lost in thought rather than taking the details, this person says. Others listing out the different ones. We're getting most of the skills represented. Linda says non-judging because when it comes to herself. Marjorie says non-reacting. She says she's a short fuse. Let's see. Alexis says non-reacting, constantly judge why I react the way I do. Okay, so while those keep coming in, very interesting, by the way, all these different responses. So just to say a little bit more about this report, and and the point here is not for us to try to sell something. It's just to tell you about something that's offered here by the VIA Institute, since the launches today, and a lot of you are interested in it. But as you know, we're not sitting here each week trying to sell different things. So the report, though, you do actually, like the way you take the test on the VIA site, you have to actually buy the report. So the $15 report, and you can't just take the test and get the results. You can do that online. So if you don't want to buy anything, you can search for the name of the test, 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire, and you could take it. But you won't get the cutoff scores because the research was done by VIA, and you won't get any of the interpretations of the details and so on. So we wanted to be able to, really provide something substantive for people, and to do it for sort of a nominal charge in that sense, and to give a little bit more substance in terms of what these different things mean. So what happens is that result, this mindfulness and character strengths report, it takes your VIA survey results, So you had to have taken the VIA survey, of course, and it takes the results from the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire, which again measures the 5 skills, and then it puts them, funnels them together into this short report in that sense, and gives you some, tips and ideas and tailored information to those different skills. So one of the things, I've taken the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire before, many years ago, but I took it again to get this report a few weeks ago. And, first off, for me to just be aware of what skills I was high in was actually insight generating for me, and again, I'm somebody obviously who practices mindfulness a lot, who's been teaching it for forever, long before I ever was teaching on character strengths. I was leading retreats in mindfulness and doing a lot on this. But still, this kind of framing of it was just new insights for me. So I was actually high in non-reacting, non-judging, and describing, which I would not have guessed, I don't think. And then I was moderate or medium on the other two. So it really just helped me, not that I or anybody would be perfect in anything that they're high in, but it gave me a lens like, oh, this is basically a strength, because skills are a strength. So these skills to non-judge, non-react are a strength for me. So I can use those and really try, now that I'm more cognizant of it, aware of it, I can use it more in my life. I could say, wait a minute, I'm struggling to be non-judging in this relationship with my wife, or in this situation, as I was saying earlier, with my judging myself on not saying this or not saying that in that situation. I can then call forth my non-judging skill and say, hey, this is a skill that you have, use it now. So it's kind of just interesting, just on that very obvious insight generation kind of level in that sense. And then also it reminds me what I can grow in. So I'm moderate in the observing piece. So, I think this is why, we often teach what we most want to learn or what we most need to learn. And so I found that interesting, because observing and acting with awareness, while they're probably the main areas that I put my mindfulness attention on, they're still my moderate skills in that sense. So I still have so much more to grow with those. And they're often the way that I teach mindfulness. I often teach mindfulness around the observing piece and around the acting with awareness piece, ironically, as opposed to the describing piece. So it shows that I've got, just as much growth to go as anybody. So that can be interesting as well. So, there's actually more to come on this mindfulness and character strength interconnection that VIA is going to be offering later in the year. So several months from now, we'll share some more things we're going to do with that 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire that you'll be able to still use and apply to other things we do in the future. But we'll hold off on delving into that right now, but something exciting to come. Why don't we actually do a meditation, a brief meditation at this point, as a way to build on what we've just been talking about with these 5 skills. And let's put some of these skills into action with a formal meditation. So I invite us then to sit or stand in a way that is strong for you right now. So taking on a posture of strength. And with your eyes open or closed, if you're feeling alert enough and focused enough, then you might close your eyes. If you're feeling rather tired or sleepy, then you might keep your eyes open to help you stay alert and attentive. And you can bring your awareness to that movement of breath in your body, something you always have that you can turn to. I want to invite you to really observe this breath, this inhale, and this exhale. The breath is interesting. It's one of those things that we can actually experience with our 5 senses. Sometimes that's easier to do than other times. but we can feel our breath, it's the touch sensation of it, the warmth of it, the movement of it. We can feel it in our body, and we can feel it if we put our hand in front of our nose or mouth. If we're outside and it's maybe a little bit cold, we can see our breath, quite literally. We can hear our breath and our breathing. We can taste our breath, we can smell our breath. It doesn't have to always be pleasant. We can just notice. Observing is about observing. It's about noticing. It's not about saying everything has to be positive. Some of that might be somewhat negative or not so pleasant. But regardless, we can observe the breath in that way. So perhaps you can appreciate that now as you breathe in and out. And might you take a moment to mindfully describe your breath? Maybe putting some details to your breath and your breathing right now that you hadn't before. Describing doesn't mean you have to give a dissertation on each sensation, but you can give a sentence or two sentences to each thing that you noticed. So you could describe how you notice your breath flowing in and out of your nostrils, or the edges of your lips. Perhaps you could describe exactly where on the edges of your lips. You could describe what that sensation is like in your nose or lips. Describing it with details like tingling or warming, numbing, cooling of the air flowing through, and so on. And you can describe the breath in your chest or abdomen, wherever it happens to be. If it's in the abdomen, your stomach, then you're breathing deeply, and you can describe that and the pulling or the pushing sensation of the breath against your abdominal wall. Or you can describe, if you're maybe taking more shallow breaths, you can describe the sensations in your chest. Maybe describe how your whole body might even kind of move up a little bit and down with each breath. And of course, describing doesn't have to end there. Those are some nice ways to do it with the sensations, but you can describe how you feel emotionally right now with your breathing like this. Because it's about describing that inner experience. Some people might start, a certain percentage of people start to feel anxious when they practice mindfulness. So you could describe that. You can describe in details what you notice about any anxiousness by simply breathing in and out in this way. Or you might feel excitement, gratitude that you can breathe. Billions of people have stopped breathing over the centuries. So you can breathe. So you can describe that joy and that gratitude. So positive and afflictive elements to this that you can describe. And perhaps already you're noticing sort of a non-judging quality here, where we're not really here to say this is good or bad. We're practicing more of a accepting, more of a acceptance that this is how it is right now with whatever we notice. And perhaps just in doing this particular activity right now with the group, You can notice if judging thoughts come up for you. Judging thoughts of I'm not doing it right. Everybody else is doing it better than me. I screwed that one up again. And of course, they can get more and more harsh, more and more negative. I'll say more and more ridiculous, actually. And so we can practice non-judging by calling out the ridiculousness nature of our thoughts sometimes and being kind to ourselves. That it's not a competition. It's just simply sitting here or standing here and breathing and practicing mindfulness. So we can have a gentleness, a gentle way about ourselves. Our mind can be very tricky in how it judges in an unhealthy kind of way. So we can treat that trickiness also with the sense of gentleness. Almost as if you're carrying a wounded, broken bird with two hands, just very gently, gingerly, carefully. So too, you can treat your mind with that sense of gentleness, your body with that sense of gentleness. And you could take the same approach that we're doing sitting here, breathing. Perhaps after today's session, you could then start to move around your room or stand or walk, do different things and still carrying with you your breathing, observing and describing. That way you can be acting with awareness with the various things that you go to do.